The sky over Arda is the color of old iron, heavy and unmoving, as if the world itself has forgotten how to breathe. Ash drifts like gray snow across plains that were once green, settling into rivers that no longer sing but mutter. Somewhere far to the west, the sea groans against broken shores, and even Ulmo's waters seem reluctant to rise. This is a world that knows, instinctively, that something has gone wrong, and that it went wrong a very long time ago. Welcome to the Elder Darkness. On this journey, we step into a Middle-earth that never quite escaped its nightmare. You might find yourself somewhere in the story, perhaps standing on a hill that once bore a white city, or listening for birds that no longer come. If you enjoy wandering these darker paths of Tolkien's legendarium, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps keep the lamps lit in places like this. And as always, drop your location in the comments. Middle-earth has many roads, and it's always interesting to know where our travelers are listening from. Now, lie back and relax as we travel to the world of Middle-earth. Shadow Crown in the First Age. The tale glides backward, not forward, because this story begins where hope should have ended. Morgoth does not fall in the War of Wrath. He does not beg for mercy at the feet of Yonwi, nor is he bound and thrust into the void. Instead, something subtler and far more disastrous occurs. Exhausted by ages of war, divided by their own councils, the Valar hesitate for one fatal moment. Morgoth seizes it. Middle-earth historians still debate whether it is brute force or cunning deceit that turns the tide. Some argue that Morgoth unleashes a final corruption of the very substance of Arda, an echo of the discord he wove into the music at the beginning of all things. Others whisper that certain Maial falter, not out of loyalty to him, but out of weariness. Either way, the host of the West does not achieve its total victory. Thangorodrim is broken, yes, but Morgoth himself endures, wounded yet unchained, his power spread thin but everywhere. This survival changes everything. Morgoth withdraws, not into exile, but into the bones of the world. Mountains rise at crooked angles. Seasons lose their rhythm. Yavanna's growing things struggle, and even the Ents, remember how ancient and patient they were, feel a slow despair seep into their roots. A quirky fringe detail often overlooked. In some early traditions, Ents were said to sleep for centuries at a time. In this darker Arda, many never wake at all. The Elves feel the change first. They have always been sensitive to the marring of Arda, but now the marring is triumphant. Lindon becomes a place of long sunsets and shorter songs. Gil-galad still rules, but his banners hang heavier, as if the wind itself resists them. When Sauron rises again, as he inevitably does, he does not present himself as a would-be god, but as Morgoth's most faithful regent, organizing a world already bent toward shadow. This is where a familiar Tolkien event twists. The forging of the Rings of Power still occurs, but under a far darker premise. Celebrimbor believes, foolishly, that order can still be salvaged, that Morgoth's corruption might be contained rather than erased. Anatar's lessons are smoother, colder. When the One Ring is forged, it is not a gamble, it is a coronation. Sauron does not need to dominate free peoples. Most are already broken enough to accept his hand. Men fare worst of all. Without Morgoth's defeat, the Edain never receive their great reward in the same way. Numenor still rises, but as a wary outpost rather than a blessed realm. The long lives of its people are shorter, their pride sharper. They look east and see a Middle-earth that never healed, and west and see Vala who no longer intervene. The seeds of rebellion sprout early. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Numenor's eventual fall is inevitable in this timeline, or whether it is accelerated by Morgoth's unseen whispers riding the sea wind. And yes, even here, there is a strange, almost darkly humorous aside. Dwarves, stubborn as ever, adapt best. Crafted by Aule to endure, they seal their halls deeper, mining not for beauty but for survival. There is a fringe belief that in this world, mithril is rarer not because it is exhausted, but because the earth itself refuses to yield anything pure. As centuries grind onward, Morgoth's presence becomes less a tyrant on a throne and more a law of nature. Orcs multiply not just through breeding, but through despair, men who fall too far, elves who fade too completely. It is not explicit, not graphic, but unsettling in the quiet way Tolkien always reserved for his deepest horrors. Sauron governs openly from a rebuilt Barad-dûr, its shadow stretching earlier and longer each day. Remember the tale of Búrin and Lúthien? In this world, it is still sung, but softly, like a memory of warmth rather than a promise. Their victory does not herald the turning of the tide. It becomes an exception that proves the rule. Love can wound the dark power, yes, but it cannot overthrow it. By the time the Second Age should be drawing to a close, Arda is tired. The stars still shine. Varda's work endures stubbornly, but they feel farther away. The Vala watch, bound by their own restraint, haunted by the knowledge that their hesitation allowed this outcome. Middle-earth historians still debate whether they could intervene again, or whether Morgoth's victory has locked the world onto a single, narrowing road. And down that road, the long shadow stretches, patient, confident, unchallenged for now. A darkened world without hope. The world does not end with fire or thunder. It settles. Morgoth's victory matures into routine, and routine is far more devastating than apocalypse. Generations are born under a sky they never expect to brighten, and so they stop asking whether it once did. Darkness, when inherited, becomes culture. Sauron governs Middle-earth like a meticulous accountant of despair. Barad-dûr is no longer merely a fortress, it is an axis. Roads bend toward it. Trade flows toward it. Even rumors seem to migrate eastward. He rules not by constant terror, though there is plenty of that, but by predictability. Taxes are collected. Laws are enforced. Rebellion is rare, not because it is impossible, but because it feels pointless. The eye does not need to search frantically. It knows where everyone is going anyway. Elves fade faster here. Without the brief restoration of hope that Morgoth's defeat once allowed, their longing for the West becomes unbearable. Many sail, fewer arrive. Some ships vanish into gray waters, not sunk, simply lost. Middle-earth historians still debate whether these vessels reach Aman at all, or whether Morgoth's corruption has bent even the straight road into a wandering maze. Those elves who remain grow quiet, strange, almost translucent, as if halfway remembered. Rivendell still exists, but it feels like a museum curated by people who know the building will someday be demolished. Elrond preserves lore with the tenderness of someone copying books from a burning library. Galadriel, ruling in Lorien, is sharper here, less gentle, more watchful. The Goldenwood remains beautiful, but it is beauty under tension, like glass drawn too thin. A fringe tidbit occasionally mentioned in obscure commentaries claims that in this timeline, Lorien's leaves do not fall in autumn. They simply dull, clinging stubbornly to the branches. Men adapt in divergent ways. Some submit fully, becoming administrators, officers, governors of Sauron's order. Others retreat into myth, telling their children stories of a time when shadows could be pushed back. Gondor rises, but not as the proud bulwark of the West. It is a client state, its white stone stained slightly gray, its stewards trained as managers rather than guardians. Minas Tirith still stands. Remember its 7 levels, carved into the mountain, but the city faces east more often than west. Here, a familiar Tolkien event twists again. The finding of the ring by Isildur still happens, but its meaning shifts. Isildur does not cut the ring from Sauron's hand in a desperate last stand, because there is no last alliance strong enough to force such a moment. Instead, the ring is lost in a quieter way, stolen, hidden, mislaid amid internal power struggles. Its absence irritates Sauron, but it does not cripple him. He is annoyed, not undone. The ring becomes less a single point of failure and more an accelerant waiting to be found. Hobbits, wonderfully out of place as ever, still exist. The Shire forms late, hesitantly, tolerated because it is unimportant. This is perhaps Morgoth's greatest blind spot. He never fully understands smallness that refuses to matter. Life there is dimmer but familiar. Meals still happen on time. Arguments remain comfortably petty. One light joke survives even here. Hobbits continue arguing about mushrooms while the world collapses politely around them. Some habits are indestructible. The War of the Ring, when it finally echoes into this age, is not a grand clash but a series of containment efforts. Gandalf still walks Middle-earth, but he feels older, more cautious, less inclined toward fireworks. His wisdom is sharper, his hope quieter. He nudges rather than rallies. When Frodo inherits the ring, the quest is not framed as saving the world, but as delaying its final consolidation. Destroying the ring is discussed, then gently set aside as unrealistic. Middle-earth historians still debate whether this resignation is wisdom or failure. Rohan exists, but its riders patrol borders that shrink every decade. Theoden rules a people accustomed to retreat. Helm's Deep still stands, and still endures a siege, but its victory is hollow, an evacuation rather than a triumph. The Hornbird becomes a legend not of defiance, but of buying time. Aragorn walks the paths of the Rangers, yet even he doubts the meaning of kingship in a world already claimed. He remembers, faintly, a destiny that feels written for someone else. And always, above it all, Morgoth remains. Not visible, not vocal. He is pressure. He is gravity. His will seeps through stone and story alike. Sauron is the administrator, the tyrant you can point to. Morgoth is the reason resistance feels exhausting before it even begins. A curious scholarly argument persists among lore masters, whether Morgoth's continued presence actually weakens Sauron in the long term. The theory suggests that absolute domination leaves no room for creative evil, that without opposition, even darkness stagnates. Evidence is thin, but intriguing. Orc culture, such as it is, grows ritualized, repetitive, almost bored. Innovation declines. Cruelty becomes procedural. As the Third Age grinds on, victories shrink, defeats blur, and the idea of an ending feels naive. The stars are still there, distant and cold. Somewhere, Samwise Gamgee listens to an old story about elves and wonders what it would be like to see one. The world keeps going, not because it is winning, but because it has not yet learned how to stop. The long defeat fulfilled. By the time the world senses it is nearing an end, it no longer remembers what an ending is supposed to feel like. There are no trumpets, no gathering of banners under a hopeful sky. Instead, there is a collective slowing, like a long breath held for too many ages. Morgoth's victory has ripened fully now, not into chaos, but into permanence. Sauron still seeks the ring, of course. Some habits are eternal. When it resurfaces, because in Middle-earth, lost things always resurface, it does not ignite panic. It causes paperwork. Networks activate. Messengers ride. The ring passes briefly through hands far humbler than kings. A merchant, a frightened hobbit, a minor official who knows enough to be afraid, but not enough to be heroic. Frodo still carries it for a time, though no songs are written about his courage while he does. His journey feels smaller, quieter, almost private. The familiar Tolkien event reaches its distorted reflection at Mount Doom. The path is walked, the fire reached, but not with the expectation of success. Gandalf does not say the ring must be destroyed. He says it might be possible, which is a very different thing. When Frodo stands at the crack of doom, the moment stretches thin. Middle-earth historians still debate whether the ring could have been destroyed at all in a world so deeply infused with Morgoth's will. In this telling, Frodo falters, and no providential accident intervenes. Gollum never falls. Fate, it seems, is tired too. The ring returns to Sauron, and nothing dramatic happens. That is the most unsettling part. No sudden conquest follows. No fiery apocalypse. Sauron simply tightens what is already secure. Aragorn never claims the throne, not because he is unworthy, but because kingship itself feels obsolete. Gondor continues under stewards who now rule in perpetuity. Rohan fades into folklore. Lorien dims and finally empties. Galadriel departing westward without ceremony, her ring powerless, her task finished long ago. Elves become memory. Dwarves seal their deepest halls and are heard from less and less. Ents, having watched the forest lose their will to grow, simply stop walking. Fangorn becomes a still place, unnervingly quiet. A fringe belief claims Treebeard stands unmoving for centuries, thinking one last thought and then letting it go. Morgoth never returns to a throne because he does not need one. He is victory without celebration. His essence is too diffused to overthrow, too foundational to confront. The Valar remain silent, not absent, but constrained by the weight of consequence. They have learned that even gods can lose a world and still have to watch it continue. And so the Fourth Age arrives not with renewal, but with acceptance. Men dominate what remains, but even they feel smaller, less ambitious. Great works cease. History becomes administrative. Legends feel embarrassing to retell. Somewhere in the Shire, now absorbed quietly into a larger system, hobbits still garden. Samwise grows old. He never sails west. He never expects to. Now the pace slows. The road stretches out, empty, familiar. The sky lightens slightly, not with hope, but with calm. The wind softens. The world is not screaming anymore. It is resting in its own flawed way. Morgoth has won, yes, but his victory is not loud. It is the long, lone note held beneath everything, steady and unchallenged. And as the ages drift onward, even that note begins to fade into something almost peaceful. Not redeemed, not healed, just quiet. The listener remains, breathing in the after-echo of a world that chose endurance over triumph, survival over salvation. The darkness no longer presses. It simply exists,